This may be our last video in the series. I'm going to show you behind the scenes some of the code on the student summary form and how we share the data with the global object. I'm going to delete global 2 because we just put that in there as an example. We don't need that, just to clean up some of that code. And then we are going to look at the code behind student summary. So if we take a look at the student summary code, I had initially created some global variables, but then decided that I didn't need them here. The form itself has global variables, and that is these variables. Excuse me, let me back up. This is the student summary form, and the student summary form is actually going to pull upon these global variables that you see here. Okay, so on the student summary form, if we take a look at this code, we're going to see how it accesses those global variables. And what I do, there's a couple things that I do here on the student summary form. First of all, in order to work with the 3 variables, just the text, the name, the ID, and the student track, the career that they're on, I have in the form load event assigning those values. So just as soon as the form loads, these text boxes are loaded and the global variables, 3 variables, are loaded. Now remember, I also wanted to see if I could pass and work with objects, and that's the next piece of code that we're going to look at. In Form 1, in order to work with the objects, I believe I need to go back to that code. Let me see if I can call that up. It's actually back here. And in that code for Form 1, I am going to create a global student variable. In order for this global student variable to work, I had to create the global student in global.cs. So if I did not have this line of code here, let me comment that out. I'll comment both of them out for well, I think it's just computer science student right now. And I go back, the error message that I get is that computer science student global does not contain a definition for a computer student. So I had to basically globally declare a generic, to me it's just a generic computer science student. And I did likewise with an engineering student. So back on Form 1, I'm going to take out these comments. So now, in addition to assigning the 3 class global variables for name, ID, and track, I'm also sending in an engineering student. Crossing my fingers, I should be able to select and not assign, for example, the global variable here, and the global variable here, and the global variable here. If I choose engineer, this should work. It won't work, I believe, if I use computer science. We'll see. There might be something else I have to edit. So I'm going to just type in a name, Fred, ID number, and then I'm going to choose engineering, get the required hours, student summary, and it did not work. Something failed. So I'm going to have to hunt down where that failure is. If I come back and I uncomment those, I have a feeling that it will work, but then it's not using my class level variables. Let me just see if that works first. Fred again, have an ID number, choose engineering, get hours, student summary. So that worked. So I know that somewhere my individual data for this computer engineer was not getting set. The individual variables are getting set, but the engineer fields are not. So I'm going to investigate and be back. Okay, to be honest, I'm not sure where I left off with you, but the coolest part that I thought was going to work is not. I'm going to show you what I was trying to do. All of the code is working right now, and we are sharing global variables through the global. They are individual name, ID, and the track. What I wanted to do was to see if I could access a global object that was created, and that's what I had started to explain, that if a computer science radio button was clicked, I'd create a new computer science student, and then I would assign that to the global variable here. That is not working. If I run or I comment this out and I run the code will work, but it's not actually doing behind the scenes what I want it to. And we still get student summary. But the reason that we're still getting that student summary is the fact that on the student summary form, I'm still manually assigning the text and the label, the name, the ID, and the track label to the global variable, string variables. So these string variables are still being set, which is why it's working. What I thought I was going to be able to do, I'll just kind of show you this code, and I think I'm close, or I'm never going to get there, one or the other, is that I could send in to the constructor an object, and then determine if that object that I sent in was either a computer science student or an engineering student. And depending on which student it was, I could call upon their individual name, ID, and academic track. So that was the idea, but it is failing. At this point in time, I'm getting a null pointer exception when I run this code because I'm not checking to see if a student was actually generated. So what I thought was happening behind the scenes is not. When I go to the code for Form 1, right here, when this global student was being created, or what I thought was creating a global student, somehow that's not happening the way that I think it should. So anyway, it does show you how to transfer individual data back and forth using this global class, and that would be what I would recommend for you guys, to share data back and forth. We will continue to work on the passing back and forth a object, because right now we're only able to access individual data items and not objects. And so I will upload all of this code so you have availability to it, and together maybe we can figure out where I'm going wrong. That is it. Thank you very much and have a good night.